Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
If you're listening to this podcast, then you're in great company. We've got thousands of listeners who have a thirst for continuous improvement and raising standards in business. Whether your interest is in quality, sustainability, or risk standards, I'd love to welcome you as a member to our online platform for all things ISO, the ISOlogy Hub. The ISOlogy Hub is the leading place to get access to all of your online resources, from in-depth training courses through to our very popular coffee break training, to templates and action plans and many other resources to help raise standards. As a member, you get access to over 100 courses, taking you from learner to practitioner to leader. The ISOlogy Hub has all the resources that you need, which will really help to make your life easier and to help improve compliance in those business critical areas. So if you'd like access to learning and compliance resources ranging from data privacy to environmental management, anti-bribery, business continuity, quality, health and safety, to name just but a few, the list is endless actually, then we'd love you to come and join us. Just head over to the isologyhub.com. Hi and welcome to the ISO Show, and a Happy New Year to you if this is the first podcast that you're listening to in 2025. So I'm looking forward to recording more podcasts for you. As you probably noticed in 2024, it wasn't just me doing the podcasts. A couple of my colleagues were also doing the podcasts, which I think hopefully you've enjoyed that variety and different topics and also hosts as well on the podcast. So we'll be continuing with that in 2025, and I'll be focused again on the sustainability standards. So this is a real passion of mine. It's something that I'm actually doing a master's in terms of a master's by research to understand what the potential implications are and the role of greenhouse gas emissions verification in terms of helping organisations to demonstrate their credentials and achieve net zero. So I thought it'd be a good way to start the new year with a particular topic that I'm researching, which is all about greenwashing, which is definitely a topical subject at the moment, especially with the new Green Claims Directive coming out on the 27th of March in 2025. And by the way, we'll be covering that in more detail later on. Not in this episode, but in a month or two's time when we've got some further information on the directive and how it might affect different organisations depending on which country you're in. So I'm going to be running a series of 3 podcasts that are linked back to greenwashing, because I think this is a very critical issue for businesses in a world that's increasingly concerned about environmental impacts, and companies are under immense pressure to demonstrate their sustainability credentials. But how can businesses truly differentiate themselves from those simply paying lip service to green practices? Well, I know that for many of you, you will already be certified to standards such as ISO 14001, the environmental standard, and ISO 50001. But there are other standards if you're looking at demonstrating your credentials when it comes to carbon management as well. And I think this is an area that is definitely worth looking into if you're looking at anti-greenwashing your organisation. So in this 3-part series, I'm going to be talking about the rise of greenwashing and how it's impacting on businesses. Then in the second part, I'll be taking you through the 7 shades of greenwashing. Yes, there are 7 shades. So I'll be taking you through the 7 shades of greenwashing that you need to be aware of. And finally, the role of verification in terms of helping to combat greenwashing by building genuine, impactful, evidence-based sustainability strategies. So hopefully this will resonate with you if you're an evidence-based type business, if you do internal audits to be able to demonstrate your compliance. And you may be audited by your clients or have to demonstrate evidence on certain things on an ongoing basis. So this is going to be particularly relevant to you. So let's start with the basics then. What exactly is greenwashing? Well, greenwashing is, in essence, it's a deceptive use of environmental claims to mislead consumers and other businesses into believing a company's products or services are more environmentally friendly than they actually are. And the term greenwashing was first coined in 1986 by J. Westerveld, who was an American environmentalist. He first used the term in an essay describing his experience at a hotel in Fiji. Now, this hotel that he was staying at encouraged guests to reuse towels to save the environment, but Westerveld observed that the hotel was simultaneously expanding its operations and significantly damaging the local environment in other ways. So there was a contradiction there that he wanted to highlight. So the key takeaway here is that his observations exemplified how businesses could deceptively use environmental claims to mislead consumers into believing their products or services are more environmentally friendly than they actually are. But based on my research, there's an article from a couple of years ago basically stating that many global organisations from a wide range of industries have recently been issuing carbon reduction pledges and often promising to reach net zero by 2050, which, by the way, there isn't anything wrong with that. But controversially, research reported in The Economist has broadened the scope in other ways, and that it's identified trends in a number of articles which has attracted interest compared to the traditional sustainability journals, that these voluntary disclosures and pledges lack a coherent framework for measurement and reporting. So, there is a lot of criticism around about making pledges and not actually delivering on that. So, in effect, talking the talk but not walking the walk. And again, this is where evidence comes in to play, and this is where it's basically the antithesis of greenwashing. So if you've got the evidence to back up your claim, then you're in a great position, not only to communicate to stakeholders, but also to communicate to regulators. You may recall that last year, in 2024, I ran a series of podcasts on ESG reporting, and in particular, in relation to European sustainability disclosure reporting, which I hope you found interesting. If you haven't heard those, I'd strongly recommend going back to them because I'm talking about some regulations that are coming out in 2025. So what are some of the common tactics of greenwashing? Well, I'm sure that you've come across certain eco-friendly or sustainable products or services, and you're questioning, well, how did they do that? Is it really eco-friendly? And sometimes the claims can be quite vague and ambiguous. There's a lack of clarity around it. Another form of greenwashing is a focus on a single issue, so highlighting one minor, potentially, environmental benefit while ignoring some of the more significant negative aspects across a supply chain. And then, of course, we've seen a number of cases of false labelling and also misleading so-called certifications. So this is where, green certifications potentially are organisations that are charging for a badge, but there isn't any substance behind it. So there isn't a clear specification for what a company is being assessed against as far as making that green claim or pledge. And also there aren't any rules around the actual verification process. And again, that's where there are standards in place for that as well. So there are a number of organisations out there, sadly, that I'm sure they mean to do good, but unfortunately, they aren't evidence-based and they haven't got a coherent framework for being able to assess an organisation against. So I'll be talking a little bit more about ISO 14064 in another podcast, because that is obviously the international recognised framework for greenhouse gas emissions calculations and reporting, along with verification as well. And then there's greenwashing by association. So that's where an organisation is implying that it's green because it's connected to environmental causes through sponsorships or marketing campaigns. And I know that The Guardian, which is a UK-based newspaper, has published a number of articles exposing instances of greenwashing where this is the case, which has also highlighted how certain brands exaggerate their environmental credentials. I think the problem with these sorts of scenarios that I've just mentioned is that it's ultimately creating an erosion of consumer trust and also business-to-business trust, because people are becoming increasingly sceptical about environmental claims, which makes it harder for us to truly trust those sustainable companies that are actually doing the right thing. And so it is disappointing in that respect. So I don't mean to cast doom and gloom at the beginning of the year, but I think it's important that organisations are, if you are making a pledge, go into it with your eyes wide open and make sure that you've got a framework or evidence to be able to back up your claims if you're asked about it. Because it'll be interesting when this Green Claims Directive comes in, exactly, what information you need to provide to be able to substantiate your claim. So how can businesses avoid the pitfalls of greenwashing and build genuine sustainability systems and initiatives across their organisations? Well, first and foremost, you need to focus on transparency and accountability. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. And then report on it. So, disclosing environmental data openly and transparently, that's one way. Including methodology. So, if you haven't got anything to hide, you shouldn't really be worried about the methodology and the data. All businesses, have got an environmental footprint. And so it's just about being transparent and clear on what that actually looks like for your business. And obviously, one of the most credible ways of being able to avoid greenwashing is to be able to seek independent third-party verification of your sustainability claims. Another one is to focus on the life cycle assessment. So evaluate environmental impacts across the entire product or service life cycle could actually not only be an eye-opener, but also identify costs and potentially significant environmental aspects and impact reductions. I'd also recommend looking at your continuous improvement cycle. So if you've already got an ISO management system in place, why not integrate that with your management review, for looking at environmental targets, looking at objectives, and also looking at interested parties and the legal requirements and other interested parties' requirements, and build those opportunities for improvement into your ISO management system. And last but not least, have an engagement plan with your key stakeholders. So looking at how you collaborate with suppliers, customers, and other stakeholders can help you to identify and address specific environmental challenges by working in collaboration together. So just to wrap up then, clearly greenwashing is a serious threat to the credibility of those organisations that are acting responsibly and doing the right thing and are part of this sustainability movement. But by understanding the tactics of greenwashers and prioritising transparency and accountability, you'll be able to then clearly communicate genuine environmental action, and businesses can build trust with consumers, also help to drive innovation at the same time, and hopefully contribute to a more sustainable future. If you'd like to find out more information about greenhouse gas emissions reporting, transparency, methodology, and communicating that alongside verification, and you can find further information at www.carbonologyhub.com. You'll also be able to find, in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be publishing the 7 Shades of Greenwashing, which is a guide to all the various greenwashing terms that you need to be aware of, which I'll be covering in more detail on the next episode of the ISO show. Thanks very much for joining me today, and don't forget to leave a review and subscribe if you don't want to miss any future episodes. Thanks once again.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.